If you are someone that enjoys Escape from Tarkov and you happen to live in the United States, this video is extremely, extremely important. The reason why I say that is because, and I mean, I take no reservations when I say this, I mean exactly what I am saying. It is very, very possible, and even likely, that the United States government could end up restricting our ability to play the game at all. That's not even a joke. I'm dead serious. That is something that is very, very possible in the near future. Why? Because of this proposed bill, S686. This is known as the Restricting the Emergence of Security Threats That Risk Information and Communications Technology, otherwise known as the Restrict Act. Through the Restrict Act, this more or less gives the Secretary of Commerce, an appointee by the Office of the President, the ability to be able to make a determination as to whether or not a website, an application, or a piece of hardware is malicious enough to recommend to the President that they restrict it, ban it, block it, disallow our ability to be able to touch it, use it, see it, feel it, enjoy it at all. To the extent that if we tried to circumvent that procedure using something like a VPN, there would be a fine of up to $1 million per infraction. I'm not even joking. This is a really real thing, but it actually is even worse than that. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. Hey everybody, my name is Onepeg. If you end up enjoying this video or think that this is relevant to your interest in some way, please consider subbing the channel, maybe even hitting the like button or whatever. It helps me continue to pay my editor. I'd very much appreciate it. Thanks. We're all relatively familiar, I think, at this point with the story of the United States government and TikTok being involved with each other, to the extent that the United States government is looking at restricting TikTok's access to us. The ability for us to be able to use TikTok could change permanently as we know it, maybe even banning the ability for us to see it, touch it, feel it at any point in the future if certain interests get their way. Now, regardless of how you feel about TikTok and its level of access and the data it collects and whether or not that's getting sent over to people in China and whether or not the Chinese government can see everything about us, that isn't really relevant to this. I mean, it is in part, but this bill goes much, much, much further than that. This bill would allow the government to be able to reach into everything that it deems threatening with very little restriction. And again, if you're someone that enjoys a video game like Escape from Tarkov, that game is on the block. Now, when I say this bill gives the Secretary of Commerce authority, I mean that it gives them authority. They don't have to worry about being elected. They're appointed by the president, which basically means an extension of the presidential office and what the president's agenda is, regardless of which presidency is in office. And it also gives them the authority to be able to do something about it. Addressing information and communication technology products and services that pose undue or unacceptable risk. The Secretary, in consultation with the relevant executive department and agency heads, is authorized and can take action to identify, etc., subject to the jurisdiction of the United States that the Secretary determines poses an undue or unacceptable risk of, and then it goes through sabotage, subversion, in their design, manufacture, production, distribution, installation, operation, or maintenance of information and communications technology products and services in the United States that could have catastrophic effects on the security of or interfere in anything having to do with a federal election or the United States' critical infrastructure. They can also make this determination as to whether or not they believe it to be coercive or criminal inactivity by a foreign adversary that are designed to undermine the democratic processes and institutions or steer policy and regulatory decisions in favor of the strategic objectives of a foreign adversary. Now, the bill goes on to determine that a foreign adversary is China, Russia, Taiwan, because China technically has control of the Taiwanese, and Venezuela, Cuba, among other things. Notice that I mentioned Russia. Escape from Tarkov is a video game that is created in St. Petersburg, Russia. Now, for all of you that are going to say that the game is headquartered in the UK, the headquarters in the UK is a P.O. box. There is one person, that exists there. Now, there are meeting minutes that incorporated the business and also names Nikita and Dmitry as 50-50 shareholders, owners of that company. But all it does is act as a way for Zola to transact business, for that money to flow through the UK, and it just gets sent off to St. Petersburg. Every single hands-to-keyboard developer that has anything to do with the actual development of that video game, aside from a couple of community managers that reside outside of St. Petersburg, they all reside in St. Petersburg. I don't know why people think that the office in the UK has any relevance at all. It doesn't. the mainstay of that company is in St. Petersburg, Russia. And if you think the United States government, in all of its infinite wisdom, wouldn't look at something like that as threatening, you are out of your mind. The bill then talks about process and procedure, saying that the Secretary of Commerce has 180 days to review something and then present it to the president, who then has 30 days to act on it if the secretary determines it's a risk. What are they considering, you ask? Oh, well, I've got that right here for you. Any software, hardware, or any other product or service integral to telecommunications products and services. So all telecom, including wireless area networks, mobile networks, satellite payloads, satellite operations and control, cable access points, wireline access points, core networking systems, long, short, and backhaul networks, and edge computer platforms. So basically anything that is capable of having a packet sent or received by you at your house or literally anywhere else, your cell phone, anywhere, can be monitored by the government. All information traveling to and from you and any of your devices can be monitored by the government, and they can make a choice based on that information that they are now monitoring. All of it, everything, including this video, let's say, because that would give them the authority to. But it goes on from there. Any software, hardware, or any other product or service integral to data hosting or computing service that uses, processes, or retains or is expected to use, process, or retain sensitive personal data with respect to greater than 1 million persons in the United States at any point during the year period preceding the date on which the covered transaction is referred to the Secretary for review, or the Secretary initiates review of the covered transaction, including internet hosting services, cloud-based services, machine learning, managed services, and content delivery services, internet or network-enabled sensors, webcams, etc., unmanned vehicles, including drones, software designed or used primarily for connecting with and communicating via the internet. And then it goes on to talk about desktop applications, mobile apps, gaming applications, payments, web-based apps, information and communications technology products or services, artificial intelligence and machine learning, quantum key distribution, quantum communications, quantum computing, post-quantum crypto, autonomous systems, advanced robotics, biotech, synthetic biology, computational biology, and e-commerce technology and services. Basically everything. Anything and everything that can be transmitted informationally via the internet, via satellite, via your cell phone, or otherwise is something that the United States is now saying that it not only gets the ability to monitor, but also control in terms of whether or not you or I are able to view or consume it. Because, let's put it in terms of Tarkov, a company like Battlestate Games that could have personal sensitive information on us, which could be anything. Let's say it's our birth date or phone number. That information in and of itself could be enough for the United States government to trigger an investigation. And that only means that BSG would have to have the information, would have to have accounts over history within the last calendar year, would just have to have amassed more than 1 million United States people's accounts in order for the investigation to trigger. So if there's more than 1 million accounts right now with BSG for Americans, that means the United States government could review it. And if the determination from Gina Raimondo, the current Secretary of Commerce, who, by the way, is not a gamer and doesn't understand IT, they are an investment banker, someone that ran a venture cap fund, and a lawyer, they can make the determination that a gun game that is set in Russia, where we're running around Russian monuments and whatnot, yelling cheeky-breeky at each other and firing a bunch of AKs and relatively realistic simulations of firearms, especially in an environment right now where the government, I guess at large, the current presidency at the very least, is kind of anti-gun, anti-2A. You could very, very realistically see a scenario where they're like, no, and they cut us off. And that could just be the beginning, literally just the beginning. All because a bunch of game devs in St. Petersburg decided to make a game that we all love and enjoy. Literally because this bill passes. That's what this bill gives them the authority to be able to do. So you can see how something as minuscule and small as a game like Escape from Tarkov being something that now the government get to scrutinize and decide whether or not we're able to consume it could become much, much worse. Much worse. The bill goes on to be very specific about them only targeting foreign adversaries. But remember, a foreign adversary is something in name. In this case, it's most of the communist regime countries. For now, these are the list of countries People's Republic of China, including Hong Kong, Macau Special Administrative Region, the Republic of Cuba, Iran, People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, the Russian Federation, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela under the regime of Maduro Moros. Now remember, they're talking about what they refer to as foreign adversaries, which right now, again, is China, Hong Kong, Cuba, Iran, Korea, North Korea, the Russian Federation, and Venezuela under its current regime. The idea here, though, is that at any point in time, and they've actually laid out a pathway for all of this, they can vote on whether or not someone is now considered a foreign adversary. What's to say that at some point they don't name a new foreign adversary? If that's the case, then the Secretary of Commerce would then be able to scrutinize the information coming to and from that country. If Russia, by some stroke, ends up actually being able to annex all of Ukraine, let's say, and Ukraine becomes part of Russia, that would also mean that if games that are coming out of Ukraine were to be scrutinized, then Stalker would end up being on the potential chopping block. Could we then end up seeing a situation where any Ukrainian developed game, because it was now taken over by Russia, could end up being a thing that they block from our ability to be able to play as long as it becomes too popular? Kind of a weird position to say that an indie game, as long as it doesn't become too famous or too much played, could end up being fine. But if it becomes too popular, if a game becomes like Tarkov-esque levels of popular, it could then end up on the chopping block. What if Tarkov releases Arena, and Arena ends up seeing another million plus or 2 million units worth of game sales? In that case, then would that be lumped in with Escape from Tarkov's core game? Or is that going to be held as a separate entity? Does Battlestate Games end up being rolled up into one because there's a lot of Americans that at one point in time played Contract Wars, or any of the other titles that the developers at BSG have been or are currently involved in? You see where this starts to get muddy, right? And remember, asking these questions by us more or less means nothing once the government passes this bill, because we no longer have the ability to have a say in what it is that we are and are not allowed to consume. The Secretary of Commerce and the President of the United States will be making those decisions for us. That is a whole lot more than just saying TikTok bad, ban TikTok. If you are an American that believes in the freedom of speech, or if you are an American that just likes playing Escape from Tarkov, I would encourage you to send a message off to your congressperson explaining to them why this is such a bad idea. As of right now, this seems like it is starting to falter a little bit in terms of its support. I'm hoping that this will be killed, because right now I don't think any of the old fucks in Congress have a clue what it is that they are looking at and why this is so problematic. In fact, I believe that they think that they're doing the right thing, or at the very least, they're making a nice cushy deal for themselves to know that they're protecting all of us from being able to, I don't know, be exposed to the boogeyman or whatever. The people that should be able to make the determination on what information is shared with whomever should be ours. And to an extent it is, just no one ever reads the terms of service. And that's what we've all been doing over history, at least insofar as the internet and e-commerce is concerned, is we've been trading away our personal information and data for free stuff. Maybe that's the part of it that should change. But if that's going to change, it should be individualized. It shouldn't be on the government to make those determinations for us. And it sure as shit shouldn't be on the government to make the determination as to whether or not we can enjoy the things that we're allowed to, or should be allowed to. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this one. Thanks so much for coming and checking it out. Please consider following me over at twitch.tv/onepeg. I stream every day around 7 to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until whenever. And as always, if you would consider subbing the channel here, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you so much for lending me your eyeballs, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.